Welcome to episode 13 of Sports Talk with the Statsman. Hi there, folks. I'm Paul Bruno, and I want to thank you for joining me on my YouTube channel at PB the Statsman. On today's show, I want to share my plan to shift the focus to NHL analysis with a fantasy hockey slant. I'm calling it the Daily Fantasy Hockey Recap. For instance, there were 3 games in the NHL last night. In the first game, Tampa came out as 5-3 winners against Nashville, and I wonder if I wrote them off a little prematurely in my preseason preview of the Atlantic Division, which you'll see over at RotoWire if you go to the Fantasy Hockey Podcast section on the homepage on the Hockey tab. And the second game, there was a glitzy Stanley Cup presentation as in Vegas, as only Vegas can do it, and the Knights parlayed that energy to a 4-1 win over Seattle. And in the third game, Chicago and Pittsburgh got together to reprise a game late last season where the Pens hosted the Hawks and lost a game there, and it cost them a playoff spot. Well, on opening night of the NHL, Chicago served up a second serving, defeating the Penguins on home ice in a game that featured the debut of Connor Bedard and Sidney Crosby at center ice for the opening faceoff. That's YouTube worthy if you want to hear what the referee said to them on the opening faceoff. It was pretty interesting way to start the season. Now, over to the top performers last night. Nick Paul excelled for Tampa. This guy is a depth forward for this club on the depth chart, centering the third line. He came through with a pair of goals and 23.7 fantasy points to lead all shooters on the night. He got 2 goals and 1 assist, 2 power play points, 3 shots on goal for that great game total. Right behind him was Ryan O'Reilly, who made his debut for Nashville last night as the number 1 center on that team, and he collected 15.6 fantasy points with a goal and an assist, 4 shots on goal, and 2 blocks. From the wing position, Nick Foligno was a star in Chicago's opening night win. Despite the fact he logged 4th line minutes, he was on the ice late at the end of the game and got an empty net goal to boost his total to 14.2 fantasy points. He added an assist, 2 shots on goal, had a hit and 2 blocks. He won't be a big-time fantasy performer, but he was a star on the opening night. And Brian Rust on the other side of the ice, he scored Pittsburgh's opening goal in this game, and it's the 3rd straight season opener in which this guy scored, so that's notable for him. From the defense position, Mikhail Sergachev noticed that he's ready to challenge the top defenders in the league in terms of scoring. He got off to a great start with an assist and 9.8 fantasy points. He's 1-2 with Victor Hedman to be the aces of the Tampa attack from the blue line, and Hedman was up there with 8.6 fantasy points as well, with an assist, 4 shots on goal, and a block for himself. And another notable defender performance last night was Jamie Oleksiak in a losing cause for Seattle with 8.9 fantasy points, 1 shot on goal, 4 hits and 6 blocks, proving that you don't need to get goals or assists to get a good fantasy point total, as he did last night. In the Nets, Peter Mrazek probably won't be featured here too many times this season in terms of top goalie performances, but he did come up with the best one on this night, 21.8 fantasy points, 38 saves, getting the win and 2 goals against for a great game score, 21.8. That's really nice for him on opening night. In terms of a second goalie that was a star, I'm looking at Adin Hill for Vegas, collecting similarly 21.2 fantasy points, 32 saves, a win, and a bit of an easier night than Mrazek overall to collect a nice game score. And then in Tampa, we're all going to watch out for the goalie situation here. Jonas Johansson got the opening start assignment, and he collected 12.8 points. That's on the strength of 28 saves against 3 goals against for his game score. In terms of notable injuries on the night, the worst one might be Brandon Tanev's receiving a huge high hit in coming down with what they call an upper body. It definitely was an upper body injury, and so he's going to be sidelined, probably headed for concussion protocol. And you'll hear more bits of news on the injuries and player movement, as I said, on our Fantasy Hockey Podcast. So I urge you again to check that out over at RotoWire on their homepage on the Hockey tab. That's my look at last night. Now let's forecast tonight's games from a 6-game slate and playing a little DFS. That's Daily Fantasy Sports fans with a hockey focus. And we're going to use DraftKings as the basis of our scoring system there. So you'll need to be familiar with the fact that they assign individual prices for players on a game-by-game basis based on whether they're playing at home or away and the quality of their opposition and their role in their respective lineups. That's the overall concept. And as I said, we're going to use DraftKings prices, so you'll need to be familiar with that website and their pricing system. So to give you an example of how it looks for tonight, I'll break it down into a high tier, a mid tier, and a low tier for the center position, the wing position, and the defense position, and then a high and a low tier for the goaltending position. So in terms of the 6 matches tonight, the best high tier value at center, I think, is Austin Matthews of the Maple Leafs. He's listed at $9,400 for his tilt against Montreal. In his career, he's scored more goals against the Montreal Canadiens than any other team in the NHL, and he's primed for a big season, I think, to blow past the 40-goal mark that he scored last year in a bit of a reduced schedule for him, hoping that he can play all 82 games. I picture him getting as many as 60 goals this season. So I expect him to get off to that good start, and apparently DraftKings does too, because he's one of the higher-priced guys on the board. Mikko Rantanen is my pick for top wingers tonight from Colorado. He's priced at $7,400 for a date in Los Angeles against the division rival Kings, and he's coming off a 50-goal season last year, and I'm thinking he wants to get off to a good start playing alongside the Nate McKinnon on the top line for the Avalanche. The top defenseman in the high-end tier, people are going to lean on Cale Makar. He's going to be owned in a big way, but I think I'm going to shy away from him and pivot to Brent Burns, who's been a perennial high scorer himself, and he's playing defense for the prohibitive Stanley Cup favorite, if you're believing the preseason odds, priced at $7,000 rather, versus Ottawa in a home date for Carolina. And it's notable that Carolina's shot clock goes a little bit wild on the home ice in favor of the home club, so that might boost Burns totals as well. They're not as accurate as I might say other teams are in terms of their shot clock usage there in Carolina. So that's something, a little bit of a tidbit that can work for Burns owners tonight. In the mid-range, I'm looking at Sebastian Aho centering Carolina's top line in that same game against Ottawa. He's priced at only $6,500, and that's a pretty low value for a top-line center of his quality. So I like that, and I'll jump all over it at the center position. In terms of the wing position, I'm taking a look at Willie Nylander. He's got well-described contract-ish stalemate with the Maple Leafs right now in the last year of his current deal, and he's hoping to parlay last season outstanding effort and a great start this year into pressuring the Leafs to pay him the big money that he's looking for. He's priced at only $5,900 for the tilt against Montreal tonight, and he's coming off a pretty nice-looking preseason. At the defense position, I'm looking at Quinn Hughes for Vancouver against Edmonton. I think they're in tough against the Oilers, but this guy seems to produce against all comers, and he's one of the top scoring defensemen in the last couple of years, and the new captain of the Vancouver Canucks, incidentally, priced at only $5,100 tonight. In the low end of the board, I'm looking at sub $500 players. This is value types who will help you build out your lineup and afford you the opportunity of putting some of the high-end guys that we've covered in so far. And so I see 3 valuable choices at one each at the center, wing, and defense positions. Pierre-Luc Dubois, playing second-line minutes for the LA Kings, a newcomer to this squad, is a guy who has the size, the speed, the toughness to lead a team's attack, as well as play right behind Anze Kopitar, giving a nice 1-2 punch to the Kings. And I think they'll be counterpunching like crazy tonight against the Colorado attack, and Dubois will be front and center in this, and only costing $3,500, so he should be a really good value play there. In the wing position, look, anytime the Leafs play the Montreal Canadiens, I'm going to be watching that game, and I cringe at the notion of Josh Anderson suiting up. It just seems he scores every time the Leafs and Canadiens meet, and he only costs $2,600 tonight, so book that Anderson scores. He's going to get top-line minutes, too, a new assignment for him, playing alongside Suzuki and Caulfield on that top unit for the Habs in that traditional rivalry that kicks off the season for both clubs tonight. On the blue line, I'm looking at Drew Doughty going back to LA against that Colorado team. He's the leader and the linchpin of the power play for the Kings. Should be a pretty good attack unit there, and you get him for only $4,700. That's a guy who plays upwards of 25 minutes a game for the Kings on their better game nights. In the goalie position, I'm looking at the high-end goalie with the high win probability here. Look, Chicago, I already told you, came off a very emotional, successful debut of the season last night, but they're in tough against Boston. It's a hard place to play, and Linus Ullmark is a guy who had a sub 2 goals against average last year, and I look for him to get off to a good start and the Bruins to take the measure of Chicago tonight. So you'll pay up for him at $8,500. If you're looking for cheaper value, you look for a guy who signed a big extension yesterday in Winnipeg. That's Connor Hellebuck, perennially a guy who gets 60 or so starts from the goalie position. And I think he gives them a big edge against Calgary, even though they're visiting the Cowtown tonight. $7,500 the price tag to include Connor Hellebuck in your lineup. Look, I'll be doing this format regularly, say 3 to 5 times a week. And please let me know what you think. Send questions in the comment section. And please subscribe. I don't want you to miss out. It's all free. I'm Paul Bruno. You can follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Statsman22 for more insights and access to my other sports podcasts as well as this particular production. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.